Happy Gilmore 2 is finally here, and well, from what I've seen over the past couple of days, people don't really like this film, and don't get me wrong, Happy Gilmore was a great movie. But like, why did we need a second one? Either way, the movie starts off with Happy's wife dying in the first 3 minutes. Pretty sad, but did I mention he hit her with a golf ball? It's a crazy start, but it does make sense because after that, he starts hitting the bottle way too much. And it gets so bad that he has drinks in every place. Like here, he's drinking out of a cucumber. Anyways, because he lost his wife, who was basically his accountant, now he's broke and he actually loses his grandma's house, which he fought for in the whole original movie. I don't know how to feel about that, but then we do see Happy working at a supermarket, where he runs into this sports influencer named Frank, who in my opinion is made to be annoying and absolutely is. He invites Happy to this golf tournament, but Happy is over with that. But remember when I said this guy was annoying? Well, Happy sees this and puts him in a fish tank. Yeah, after that, we're met with Happy's daughter, who is supposedly a great ballet dancer. Now, according to her teacher, she's so good that she's got a spot saved up for a school that's $75,000 a year. Now, obviously, because Happy is a broke alcoholic, he definitely doesn't have $75,000 just laying around. While this is happening, at the dinner table, Happy is being called daddy by 5 grown men. Let that sink in. Either way, he understands that he's not gonna make $75,000 by working a 9 to 5, so he goes to the one thing he was good at: golf. And it doesn't go well, which I'm not surprised, as most of his game back then was based on pure luck. But then he remembers Chubb's old advice, rest in peace Carl Weathers, and he actually starts getting better. But did I mention he's been drinking throughout this whole scene? And well, 2 minutes later, he crashes the golf cart into another because he's blackout drunk. Next, we're introduced to Shooter McGavin, who was Happy's nemesis back in the day. But because of the trauma he caused to Shooter, he's now in a mental institute where he's been there for many years. This scene shows that Shooter is still crazy in the head, so he's gotta stay at the hospital. Oh, and now Happy has to attend meetings full of other alcoholics. And of course, the therapist is Ben Stiller, whom of which we've seen a lot of comedy movies in. Either way, with no job and what looks like no future, he decides to practice golf again, and he ends up being as good as he was in the original, which I'm not surprised because this is an Adam Sandler movie. But then he goes for the golf tour, and while he's in the clubhouse, he actually witnesses a waiter get fired for a simple mistake. And we obviously see that it's Bad Bunny. But here he's called Oscar, who eventually becomes Happy's caddy. Oh, and while all of this is happening, Shooter McGavin is released from the mental hospital by, well, you guessed it, none other than Frank. More on that later, but the next day, the championship begins. Oscar, who's now Happy's caddy, is, in my opinion, really nice touch to the movie, as I feel like his character is written and played well by Bad Bunny, which I was not expecting, to be honest. But now Happy actually plays really well, but the next day where he has to go against someone, it falls apart so badly that he hides in a bathroom stall. Now obviously he doesn't hide because he's trash, but he hides because he lost his wife that day, and maybe because he's trash. But because of all of this, he starts drinking again, which ends up in Happy shooting golf balls wherever he wants without a care in the world. Meanwhile, the movie goes into this plot hole that I won't bore you with, so I'll simplify it. Happy and Shooter run into each other at the cemetery, and no, they're not crying, they're actually fighting each other after all the beef they had. They get help from Slim Peterson, who's the son of Chubb, and yes, the big dude from Breaking Bad. And suddenly, Happy's back in the game, just in time to save golf like, it's the adventure's endgame. Fast forward to the big finale, he goes up against Billy Jenkins, who in my opinion is the most egotistical character in this whole movie. But then Happy makes a deal with Frank. If Happy stinks in the pot, he will get a bunch of great products, including his grandma's house that he lost. But I told you this is an Adam Sandler movie, so obviously he stinks in the pot. That's literally the end of the movie. In my opinion, Happy Gilmore 2 is not terrible, but it is definitely not great either. It feels like the kind of movie that exists only because the first one became a cult classic and now people are, nostalgic for it. But instead of building on that success, in a meaningful way, the sequel plays it, safe and just tries to repeat old jokes and references. It definitely had its moments, but most of it just feels unnecessary. Like, let's start with the positives. There are some funny parts, don't get me wrong, Not hilarious, where I laugh every minute, but definitely a few solid moments. Adam Sandler, I'd say still knows how to deliver a goofy line and tries to make you smile. And Bad Bunny as Oscar, the caddy, was actually one of the better surprises. I expected him to be there just for the sake of, star power, but he did end up being, pretty funny and likable. His character did fit well with the tone of the movie, and he had decent chemistry with Sandler. There were also some scenes with Post Malone and Eminem, which were, I'd say, pretty funny. Those were pretty good cameos. It was a great touch to the movie, I'd say. Some of the callbacks to the original are nice, but it does get to a point where they do it every 5 minutes. I also want to mention this. The scene with Happy and Shooter McGavin getting into like a ridiculous fight in a cemetery is pretty dumb and over the top, just as it sounds. But it does kind of work because, they're so committed to the bit. Those are the scenes that actually feel like they belong in a Happy Gilmore movie. But then there's the rest of it. Most of the movie feels like it's just going through the motions. The emotional lines do not hit the way they're supposed to. We're told that golf is changing and Happy wants to save the old style of the sport, but it never really feels important. It's just like an excuse to have a villain and build up to a final match. Speaking of the villain, by the way, or so-called villain, Frank is a completely annoying guy. He's not scary, he's not funny, and he definitely isn't interesting. You can tell they were trying to make a modern version of Shooter McGavin, but it just does not land. Speaking of Shooter, by the way, it is fun to see Christopher McDonald again, but it does feel kind of forced. Same with Slim Peterson, the son of Happy's mentor. He does have some funny lines, but you can tell he's only there to replace the original mentor from the first movie who sadly passed away. The pacing is also weird too, because the beginning starts off super slow, where we learn about Adam Sandler's life throughout the years and how he's aged, and then it rushes through everything in the second half. We're told that Happy is not at his best anymore, but the movie just shows him drinking for half of the movie. It's like 1 minute he's down, and the next he's suddenly back to his old self with no real explanation. Oh, also, there is barely any golf actually being played until the very end. And now we begin with the final match. It's a typical Adam Sandler movie. Golfers are getting disqualified for insane reasons, and Happy has to make one impossible shot to win it all. It's not really exciting, but if you've seen the original film, you may feel nostalgia from it, which I totally understand. The ending to me feels the same as it did for the first movie, except this time he earned more stuff instead of just getting his grandma's house back. But it just feels too clean, there's no real tension or surprise. You understand the film's logic or plot in the first 10 minutes of the movie. It's not a bad movie, but it definitely was unnecessary and probably just an excuse for Adam Sandler and his family to have a vacation.
Battery 0%.